Welcome, everybody, to the USC Postgame Show here at the Voice of College Football. We're reviewing our Trojans' 38-21 win over Wisconsin. USC covers the 14.5-point spread. Kind of a backdoor cover, a lucky cover if you had a USC minus 14.5 ticket. But, hey, the Trojans will take it. And joining me is Tim Prangley from the Los Angeles Coliseum. Tim, you were there. Give me your insights and anything you might have picked up in the post-game presser before we field input from fans here at the Voice of College Football.
Well, we all felt it, and Riley addressed it as well. Just that the slow starts, last game, this game, they're both a bit different. This one was more just based on just the turnovers, really. I mean, if you looked at the yardage and in the game, USC was playing their game. It's just they just could not, they couldn't take care of the ball. But we saw, like we've seen in the previous games, you see them make those adjustments at halftime and come storming back. So he addressed that. He said that you have to tighten that up, get better about that, and kind of stop the slow starts.
Now, drilling down in terms of position groups, Tim, I'm sure that the number one concern for most fans is the offensive line. What, if anything, was said about the offensive line in particular?
Nope, nothing was addressed about the offensive line.
Any position group or just general 40,000-foot remarks?
Well, I actually just listened to the opening remarks by Riley, and he had Kamari Ramsey and Miller Moss in there for the, and then I had to come here and get set up for this, so I had to step out. But from Riley, he said that you show me a soft team, I'll show you a soft quarterback. Miller did in this game. I've talked about Miller, the way he hangs in the pocket, stands tall in the pocket, and gets hit. This just continues to happen.
Now, I was watching this game on CBS. You were obviously inside the stadium. CBS reporter Jenny Dell said on the air, quote, "It's not looking great for Miller Moss. They're looking for a concussion." So she didn't actually say he had a concussion, kind of implied it. And he was in the tent. Anything that you saw in terms of Miller Moss in the medical tent and like how the training staff was tending to him? Is there anything to pick up on that situation and how it was handled?
No. They asked him post game about it. He kind of just dismissed it, said they just wanted to check me out. So they probably put him into the medical tent, evaluated him, and he was fine. He was okay. There was really no issue.
Okay. And did Lincoln Riley say anything about like why he didn't have Jaden Maiava finish the game? Okay, we might have lost Tim there. Tim did tell me before we went on the air for this show that they might clear him out of his area in the Coliseum press box. So Tim gave me the heads up. All right, Tim's back. Was there anything said about why Lincoln Riley didn't just have Jaden Maiava come in late in the game? Because he was warming up very briefly. Was there anything on that?
No. Again, it was really more of it was jovial. There's laughter. There wasn't really any kind of criticism. You saw the team. It was pretty obvious what happened in this game. USC came, was the better team. The ball security was an issue in the first half. Once they got that sorted out, USC kind of kicked back in and showed what kind of team they are. So, no, it was really just a little bit talking about Miller. There was a question about Eric Gentry's health, and Riley just dismissed it completely. I think he'll address that kind of stuff later on. Yeah.
Okay. Any other media notes that you scooped up that are worth noting?
Well. No, to be honest, again, I read. So,
all right.
Yeah, really, you're hitting me up here right here with a lot of questions. I haven't seen the TV comment. Okay. You got to remember, when I'm shooting down a 200 millimeter lens. When I go back and watch the game, I'll see a lot more of the film. But right now, I was just doing a lot of photography. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So knowing that they might whisk you out of there, let's just get Tim's takes. What did you see? What do you think? What do you feel?
Give me a second, because I literally just walked up. Let me catch my breath and stuff. So why don't you go ahead, take over for a little bit, and then we'll move in. All right.
Okay. Well, while Tim does catch his breath, I think offensive line, like that is the big banner headline from this game, that the standard that USC needs to set, not going to cut it against Penn State in 2 weeks. And I did say Josh Henson has a few weeks to build up this offensive line for Penn State on October 12th. And that building process, like there's a long way to go with it. And, there are young players on this line, and like they will have to learn the hard way. They're going to have to, it's going to be a trial by fire. Like you can't learn unless you do, make a certain amount of mistakes, but shouldn't be making too many mistakes. Shouldn't be making this many mistakes. Like it got to be a pretty constant tidal wave of difficulties for USC midway through the second quarter, late in the second quarter. Wisconsin got to a point, not really, first quarter was decent, but the second quarter, it became a situation where Wisconsin was getting more comfortable with its pass rush, sometimes with 4 down linemen, sometimes with a late blitzer, still having 6 back to cover and then sending a 5th man as a blitzer, sometimes up the middle, sometimes outside. And like there were communication issues with Elijah Page and Emmanuel Pregnon. Like they would both block the same guy and the other man would come free. So, lots to pick up on, lots to clean up on for this USC offensive line. And like we saw Miller Moss, the warrior, and on his late touchdown, I don't know if anyone else thought about this, but remember John Elway, the helicopter in Super Bowl 32 against the Green Bay Packers, 1998? But just putting his body on the line at the goal line because he knew how much this game meant. That's Miller Moss. Miller Moss sacrificing his body. And like there's something obviously impressive about Miller Moss, and he certainly embodies the fight on mentality. That part of it is great. But big picture, Miller Moss cannot be taking this many hits. Just not sustainable over the course of a season. And if you keep accumulating hits, you put him up against Penn State. You put him up against Notre Dame. You put him up against, maybe Rutgers. Rutgers beat Washington the other night. You keep putting Miller Moss at risk of big hits. He's probably going to throw a crucial interception at some point that could cost USC very dearly. So this offensive line has to do a far, far better job of keeping Miller Moss clean in the pocket, reducing the amount of hits that Miller Moss takes over the course of a season, over the course of a game. Like this standard is just not going to be there. This standard is just not going to get USC where it wants to go against Penn State. That really is the main storyline of this game. I mean, Miller Moss being a leader and a warrior, we love it. It's admirable. That's obviously one of the very positive stories to take away from this game. But, big picture, in terms of USC getting to the college football playoff, in terms of USC getting 10 wins this year, in terms of USC meeting its foremost goals, this offensive line is standing in the way of that process. And there's no position group that needs more work than Josh Henson's unit. So Tim, I gave you a chance to catch your breath. Now let's get Tim's takes.
Well, let's go back. So you were talking about that play. It reminded me a lot also, if you remember, when Carson Palmer, I think it was a UCLA game where he went into the corner of the end zone and kind of got helicoptered as well. I didn't really notice, Miller did have to move around a little bit in the pocket, but I'm not really noticing the complete breakdown that you were talking about. Matt, maybe let's go watch the TV copy, but it was really one of the narratives of this game I thought about was just the way Jacoby Lane really came on. I think he had 10 catches. I mean, he really, this is kind of like a breaking out party for him. So I want to focus on that stuff. The fact that it looked like Deuce probably has a couple balls he wants back, but he looked great out there. I think that the passing game's coming along, and then Woody's just really doing a great job getting those tough yards, and then when Quentin comes in late in the game, when the defense is a little bit gassed, I mean, USC had the ball for a lot of that game. Really, outside of the turnovers, Wisconsin really wasn't doing much. So, they did a couple explosive plays, but other than that, they really didn't do much in the entire game. And so you could see that their defense was tired, and you do that switch up and you bring Quentin in. That was really interesting to see how, he's quite a load, and he was, he was great to watch late in the game.
Yeah, I just pub for everyone watching here at the Voice of College Football. One of the things I do after every USC football game, the USC Football report card at Trojans Wire, that's published. It's live. There were 2 players I gave A's to on this USC roster, and you just named them: Jacoby Lane, Deuce Robinson. Like, they made man's catches. They made big boy catches. And not only were they physically impressive, Tim, they were important catches. Like, those were the catches that stitched together the rally from the 21-10 deficit. Jacoby Lane's toe dance on the sideline on that 3rd and 15, you could argue, along with the Wisconsin muffed punt, like the Wisconsin muff and that Jacoby Lane toe dance catch on the 3rd and 15, those are the 2 biggest plays of the game. Those were the swing plays. Those are the plays that basically turned the game in USC's favor, gave the Trojans the forward momentum in the second half. So Jacoby Lane and Deuce Robinson, yeah, they stepped up in a very big way when, marking that transition from 21-10 down to 24-21 up. Obviously, the defense had another good second half, but really those 2 players, in my mind, they graded out the highest for USC.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, Matt, if you want to go ahead, you could drop the link into the chat, and then we could have some people join us. I'm going to set up so there's just our screen. So they'll be on, but they won't have a camera view. So that's an option for you.
The link to this show?
To the StreamYard, yeah.
Okay.
People have been calling me on my phone, and I decided to switch it from the backdrop to the Trojan Conquest Live because they were trying to call in.
Okay. Go ahead, Tim, while I pull up the link.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at some of these comments here. I think that you have some of the Russ is really kind of echoing what you said. He's saying there's issue. He did see the issues on the with the offensive line. Secondary was all right, and they gave up that one explosive, but I think overall they played well. Again, I'm gonna have to take a look at it. I think the linebackers again played excellent ball, and I'm really interested to see if in the next game that they don't get that slow start. I think these slow starts, if we get this slow start on the road again, that could be worrisome. Minnesota gave Michigan a hell of a run, I believe, today. I was just glancing up the scoreboard and noticing the score. So that's something to consider. And then also Penn State, if SC falls behind early to Penn State in a couple of weeks, I just wonder if they have the team to come back in that game. So yeah, pretty interesting. Good points on that. You guys, so Matt's dropping the StreamYard link in the
scrolling down. Yep, it's scrolling down at the bottom. Oh, that's the link to the show.
Matt, what you want to do is you want to put that in the actual chat so they can click on it.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, give us a call. Let us know about the win. We're interested to hear from all of you guys. We're starting to again go to the negatives. I'm really not seeing much of a negative. USC really again took it straight in the second half, won comfortably, and the story is they didn't take care of the ball. They need to take care of the ball. They play better teams and they don't have that ball security. They're not going to walk out with a win.
Well, it's an interesting dance, right? It's an interesting balance between the negative and the positive because once again, Tim, like the Michigan game, first 30 minutes, not a lot that was good. Second 30 minutes, not a lot that was bad. We're seeing how this thing is supposed to work in second halves, and we're seeing this team struggle in first half. So if second half USC can migrate to the first half, we have something. We're going to cook. But it's just a matter of playing a 60-minute game instead of a 30-minute game.
Angel, if you're out there, if you could please stop calling in because you're interrupting the broadcast when you do that. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Matt, I missed all of that because Angel keeps trying to call in.
Yeah, so just talking about, the first half USC versus second half USC. That's been a parallel between these last two games against Michigan and Wisconsin. And if USC can go from being a 30-minute team to a 60-minute team, you really have something. Like USC is an elite team if the second half iteration of the Trojans can show up in the first half and you get 60 minutes of that. You know, if you get if you get second half USC and you can double it, that's an elite team. But first half USC is going to struggle to finish in the top 6 or 7 of the Big Ten. So it's really about just putting it all together for 60.
Right. Well, and Matt Stark brings up a good point. You're talking, if we are going to look at the offensive line, you have 2 redshirt freshmen on that line that are having a little bit of trouble. But again, I think the line overall, I mean, granted, the big difference here is we weren't facing Grant, running right up the middle on us and just tearing up the pocket, and Josiah Stewart coming from the outside. I think that this offensive line clearly, like you said, is going to need some time to gel together. But really, USC takes care of the ball in the first half. They never fall behind. They would have had this game in hand from very early on. So that they have to continue to improve, like we've been discussing.
Any other players you'd like to spotlight, Tim, from this game? You talked about Jacoby Lane, talked about Deuce Robinson.
Well,
a little bit
got to talk about Miller. Yeah, I mean, those 3 really jumped out. Just the defensive line in general. I mean, we knew they were going to try to run the ball heavy. Again, teams are going to try to run the ball at SC. I mean, they limited them on third downs. They got that another huge fourth and short stop. I mean, they're doing that every game. It's almost like you almost rely on it now. Where it's fourth and short, and the team, they're trying to get back into the game. USC comes to that big stop and shuts the door on them. That was wonderful.
In terms of the defensive line, I mean, I don't know what our fans are saying in the chat. They're getting a lot of comments on the Georgia-Alabama game, like apparently not so focused on this game here. But my impression, Tim, like Wisconsin in the past has had some really nasty offensive lines, sent a number of guys to the NFL. Talking to Badgers Wire and our other Wisconsin people this week, they didn't seem really confident about their offensive line. And so, USC's defensive line really seemed to come on late third, early fourth quarter. But for long portions of this game, Braden Locke had a pretty comfortable pocket to step up into. I'm looking at this pass rush and saying, this game did not reveal overall, over the full 60, an especially high standard. I think the last 20 minutes of the game, yes, pass rush was much closer to where it should be. But for a lot of this game, pass rush really wasn't making the grade. Your assessment.
It's kind of difficult from where I am. I mean, when I'm in the end zone, I can see the line play pretty good. But most of the time, I'm about the 20-yard line looking at field level, so I can't really see the actual line play. But now it appeared to me, again, on a number of plays that we did have. You're saying that they didn't pressure Locke at all? Is that what you're saying?
Not consistently in the first 2.5 quarters, I'd say.
Right, but throughout the game, it seemed like they were getting a pretty good pass rush on Locke. He didn't feel comfortable there. They had a couple drops, but overall, I thought that, again, from where I was standing, it did seem like they were getting pressure to him. He didn't have all day to sit in the pocket. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm have to watch the game and see, but from where I was standing on the sideline looking through a 200-millimeter lens, which is like this, you guys, I don't get that wide angle view. Yeah. It appeared like there was a pass rush. So I'm looking forward to watching the TV copy and seeing how the line played.
All right, you were there at the stadium, so let's get some other observations from you, just in terms of sights and sounds, mood of the crowd, the vibe. Like, when things were going great, when things were going poorly, what kind of a crowd was this? How many Wisconsin fans were in the park? Other just observations you collected just from being around there today at the Coliseum.
Yeah, there was we knew there would be. I mean, we know there's a significant Wisconsin, transplant group here in Southern California, and a lot of them came out. They traveled well to this game, just like USC did to Michigan. It's really great. I think it's in this inaugural year, you're going to see a lot of travel from the teams, just kind of feeling their fan bases out. But yeah, early on in the first half, Matter of fact, I loved it in the first quarter. They're giving us the overrated when they went up and they scored their second touchdown. They were telling USC they're overrated. That's a lesson to all you fans out there. The game's 4 quarters long. Don't start celebrating in the second quarter. You will end up sounding probably pretty foolish. Towards the end of the second half, again, I can't ever stand it when fan bases boo their own team. But they were booing. I guess they're assuming they're booing Lincoln Riley's idea just to be a little bit conservative with not much time left on the clock at the end of the first half. He decided just to run the clock out. So you had the boo birds in the west end of the Coliseum kind of getting a little bit loud. But USC, the crowd also got pretty loud. So, I mean, on third down, on those crucial third downs and fourth down, the old gray lady can get loud when she wants. I'm really expecting a pretty crazy and raucous crowd for that Penn State game.
Were you standing next to other USC beat writers, reporters, like anything overheard, chatter that or offhand observations? Like, are you trading observations with other USC reporters during games? And do you hear some interesting little tidbits, some gossipy items, or just things that help you get a fuller picture of the game?
Yes, and for many reasons I can't repeat them here. But yeah. We literally bump into each other on the sidelines because you're kind of go up the sidelines to get your shots. But yeah, talked to a couple of guys. The first half was more like just looks, that look, kind of same looks we're giving each other in Michigan. It's like, oh geez, what's going on? But yeah, no, it was overall. There's no time, Matt. When you're down there shooting, it's like you don't really have time to sit and have conversations.
Well, let me ask you this. I think this is a question you could probably answer without getting into any kind of trouble or revealing any confidential sources or whatever. When you overhear things from other people who follow this team, do you think that everyone's of the same mindset and along the same wavelength, or do you hear a mixture of very different opinions and angles that these various people are coming from who cover USC football? Do you think it's one way, or do you think it's a melting pot of different, wildly different opinions?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I'm having a hard time with my audio right now.
When you talk to other people who follow and cover this team, are they all pretty much of the same mindset, or is it a wild, different assortment of opinions all over the map?
You're kind of breaking up for me. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can reset this really quick.
All right. Well, while Tim's resetting, so we talked about the offensive line. Defensive line, as I've been talking with Tim, really seemed to pick up some steam late in the third quarter, early in the fourth. Obviously, USC getting a lead helped with that. Wisconsin had to be a little bit more mindful of throwing the ball, had to focus on trying to drive the ball down the field, and push the ball down the field in the passing game. So defensive line was able to, I think, get a little bit more momentum, was not on its heels as much. And so you did see the defensive line get better midway through the second half. But, Wisconsin found a couple of explosives in the passing game. And obviously the secondary bears some responsibility for that. But also the defensive line was not making life miserable for Braden Locke. And again, this is a backup quarterback. And you figure that if you can really rattle him, if you can get to him, things could have snowballed against Wisconsin early in this game. But that wasn't really the reality of what was happening. So there's a lot of work for Coach Henne and Sean Nua to do up front. And of course, we do have to say, no Bear Alexander. And while USC fans, I don't think are going to miss him for reasons that we talked about on our Friday night Conquest Collins show with Tim. Nevertheless, you didn't have Bear Alexander to rotate in there for a couple dozen snaps, and so like the idea that the defensive line didn't play great in this game, with Bear Alexander not in the mix, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you can understand that. So obviously there's a need for readjustments in that regard. So that's certainly another talking point to flow from this game. Tim, are you back?
I can hear you now. So Matt, maybe if you could pop up the box score or something. I mean, again, I'm flying completely blind,
Okay.
but it did seem like that they did keep Ches Malusi in check in this game. So I mean, again, I think the defensive line did a pretty good job. Did you feel that as well? Because I mean, from the sidelines, it looked like they were not breaking off a lot of runs against this team.
Yeah, I think, the second quarter was USC's weakest defensive quarter. Wisconsin got over 100 yards in that quarter. And of course, in the first quarter, you had the 63-yard long ball for the touchdown. But second half, like the Michigan game, second half, Danton Lynn, the rest of the staff, they buttoned things down, they tightened things up, they made adjustments. And hey, Wisconsin did not score a point in the second half, so you can't get any better than that. It was once again a case of, at halftime, if there were problems, they got fixed. And it's great that they got fixed. But now we have to deal with, let's not have problems in first halves where we're giving up a couple of explosives, because, that happened in the Michigan game. And obviously this time the explosives were in the passing game, not the running game. But nevertheless, they were still explosives, and USC, we'll try to limit that in the first half of a game.
Yeah, and that's way too small on my phone here, so you're going to have to read. It's Will. Thank you, Will.
Will, great comeback win. Thank you, Will. And Will, congratulations to your Fighting Irish for a quality win over Louisville. So that boosts Notre Dame's strength of schedule. So that's good for USC if that season finale against Notre Dame is basically a play-in or elimination game for the college football playoff. So like Notre Dame doing well, that helped USC overall. And, we saw Ole Miss lose today. That's a team perceived by some as a playoff contender. So like if we have a, roller derby where you have like 5 or 6 teams at 9-3, Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, that could be the kind of thing that helps USC's playoff case if it becomes a real jumble. Yeah.
Again, I'm sorry. I'm hearing like every 8th word you're saying. Sorry, Matt.
Okay. Tim, just speak at large. Let's just give you the floor and just riff on various items that you'd like to talk about.
I mean, just in general, again, the atmosphere is slow. You can see the confidence, the fun here in the Coliseum. I mean, it's kind of like the contrast between the first half of these games and the second half of these games is the same thing. It's like how dark and horrible it was for the last couple of years before Lincoln Riley got here. And slowly you see the confidence, almost like, remember 2022, it just kind of jumped the gun and was excited on those wins. And then they started kind of faltering at the end. And then obviously last year there was a lot of losses and a lot of issues with the team. But that confidence is quickly coming back. I mean, a lot of people, I remember there was all these questions about Lincoln Riley, this and that. I'm going to throw it back to you, Matt. What do you think? So what has Lincoln Riley done this year to kind of silence a lot of the critics that were loud on the offseason and going into the season?
I think the main thing he did was hire a great defensive staff. And I think one of the things that's worth noting about this team and the toughness that it has. And I mean, I'm not saying USC is a supremely tough team, but it is tougher than last year. One strong point to make is that, what would have happened last year if USC was down 21-10 at the half? What happens to a 2023 USC team if it played anything close to that first half? Would it be able to get off the mat in the second half? That's where I think the real difference is from last year's team to this year's team. This year's team, which has a ton of flaws. Well, we can be clear about that. It's not as though this is a great team yet. Hasn't yet earned the right to be called a great team, but it is a resilient team. And last year's team was not particularly resilient, and it did not come flying out of the gate in third quarters, in second halves. And the fact that the third quarter is a quarter in which the Trojans play well, it's a quarter in which the Trojans play with confidence, they play with precision, they're sharp. like the coaching staff gets after them for 15 minutes in the locker room at halftime, and then they improve in third quarter. So that is a particularly encouraging thing, and that is definitely a way in which Lincoln Riley has improved the overall outlook and the overall performance of this team in 2024 relative to last year.
That was one of the funny parts of the press conference afterwards. They asked him. They asked what was the difference. That the defense came out in the second half and shut them down when they started the ball was on offense. And he said, "What was the big difference? What led to that big change, that flip in the second half?" And then Riley said, a hell of a speech, right? And everyone started laughing. And he said, "No, not really. I mean, we just kind of came out. We stopped making mistakes, and I think that's what this team needs to do. This team needs to get out of its own way. I mean, even against the Michigan game, and I'm not going to keep saying this canned phrase because it's kind of true, but no disrespect to Michigan. But if USC, we talked about it all week, if USC goes into Ann Arbor and plays a complete game, they win that game. And USC is next week, and then against Penn State, definitely against Penn State, they're going to have to play 4 quarters of football. They're not going to be able to get away with this. They didn't get away with it in Ann Arbor. They will not get away with it here if they do not play 4 quarters of football.
Absolutely. When Lincoln Riley was talking about, the first half, second half issue, did he kind of link that to any one group, or did he keep it pretty general in terms of the whole team?
Yeah, no, he doesn't generally single out players or even units. I mean, in general, he tends not to do that. He said it, just turnovers, right? I mean, you don't even have to be like an expert in football to realize that you turn the ball over 3 times, and give them the ball in plus territory. One time, you're driving and you have an interception, and then you have that fumble on the punt, and give them some free points at the in the first half. You do things like that, you're going to set yourself up to get into a hole. The difference is, and Lincoln Riley talked about this a couple of times now, he says the difference is the coaching staff, the coaching staff and the kids in the locker room. It's just, I think that the players are feeding off this vibe, and it starts with the coaching staff. And we have some great coaches, they're great developers, but also you have guys in that locker room that know how to win, and have won at the highest level. So I think that there's a culture that's being instilled, and you go down at halftime, no one's hanging their heads, come out, they fight, they get the ball back, right? And they go down and they score. And that's how you turn games around.
Did Lincoln say anything about Miller Moss throwing jump balls? Because, one of them was picked, but then of course, you saw Deuce Robinson coming down with a jump ball for a pretty big catch. Did that enter into the post-game conversation to any degree?
It did not, but I mean, when you throw a jump ball to Zachariah Branch, that's not really Zachariah Branch's forte. When you have guys like Deuce and Jacoby Lane, those are the guys you want, throwing those 50-50 balls. And we talked about back in the Drake London days, that those 50-50 balls become like 80-20 balls when you got a guy who's 6'5" and can go up and get the ball. So I mean, there wasn't a conversation, but as a good quarterback, you got to let your guys go make plays. I mean, a lot of people were critical of Caleb last year for being just too careful with the ball. I think that Miller has shown that he trusts his receivers to go up and make plays.
Yeah, that's a really good point, delineating between Deuce Robinson on one hand and Zachariah Branch. One guy is the big body that's going to go up and get the ball. We could also say the same for Jacoby Lane. Zachariah Branch, not so much. So that's something Miller Moss has to keep in mind when he's throwing the ball down the field. You were about to say something.
Well, I'm just saying, Branch on those crossers, we saw him have a lot of success. That's what you want. You get him out in space, you get him speed, you get the ball in his hands and let him be a playmaker. That's what his role is. For Deuce and Jacoby, those guys, Kyron Hudson, those are the guys you want to go throw the ball to let them go get it. Those guys, that's their game. I don't think that's really Zachariah's game.
You mentioned, so we've talked about Zachariah Branch as a receiver. He struggled as a punt returner in this game. Obviously, that muff, and whether or not he touched the ball, that was something that was debated by the CBS commentators. But I think, it was necessary for USC to react as though the ball was touched, regardless of whether it was. Like USC needed to try to fall on the fumble. had a chance to do so but couldn't do it. But the larger thing is Zachariah Branch not comfortable right now as a kick returner. Whether or not Lincoln addressed that post game, just what are your thoughts about Zachariah Branch as a kick returner right now?
It was addressed in the last game that there was some hesitancy. If anyone watched the post game with Lincoln Riley, he said there were a couple he felt that that he could have been more aggressive with. There were some weird, and that one punt just rolled forever. I mean, he just kicked away from him. That was a great punt. I mean, what are you gonna do with that? And then there's the trouble on that one punt. I missed that whole play, to be honest with you. I was moving to the other side to start filming. So I got to see what happened there on that punt. But yeah, there's some weird gaffes in the punting game. You got a guy who's an All-American last year, so I think that this is an anomaly. He's going to iron it out and figure out what's going on with Zachariah. Now, Matt, I would say I can't see really the chat either right now. So if you drop to see if anyone wants to talk. Otherwise, we could wrap this thing up pretty quick. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of interest in anybody calling in right now.
Look, I'm not getting questions from anybody. That's for sure. We did have $5 super chat from Danny Kennedy. First half had me worried. My thought on USC going 11-1 was in jeopardy. Phew. Yeah, definitely a sense of relief given where USC was at the half. And so hopefully next week at Minnesota, USC gets a sharper performance to lead into the Penn State game.
Yeah, and thank you, Danny Kennedy, not only for the super chat, but also for being a member of the channel. Appreciate all your support. He's been a long-time member of the channel, so thank you very much.
Yep. All right, yeah. Any last words?
Well, I was just saying, did you drop the link? Have you dropped the link a couple times in the chat? Because people are you scrolling it? They're not.
Well, it's scrolling at the bottom, and I did put it in the chat. I can do so one more time.
Well, the traffic's out of here. I need to go do writing, and we could talk about the game after I watch a little bit of the TV copy. That'll be a little easier for me. I got some great, absolutely banger pictures.
Yeah, we'll come back on Sunday for a fuller conversation on this.
Yeah, so I think the takeaway from this game was just that USC's got to start out faster. That was one of the when I did my five keys to the game for Michigan. That was actually the bonus I threw in there, that USC needs to get out in front of Michigan, make them change their offense. And I think USC has the ability to do that. Some of these offenses they're going to play, we're going to try to run the ball down their throat, where you can dictate the game if you can get out early to like a 20-point lead or a 17-point lead. But USC's just not doing that. They're letting teams hang around and self-inflicted wounds with turnovers and explosive plays. Once they get that figured out, they could use their quick offense to their advantage. And I hope they figure it out sooner than later, because again, some of these teams are going to play down the stretch here. They won't have that opportunity. They're not going to want to get behind to Penn State, because that Penn State defense, just like we saw against Michigan, is a stingy defense. And if you're trying to play uphill, that might be a recipe for disaster even at home.
Yep, and Minnesota next week is a noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific game, so the Trojans better be ready with the body clocks next week against Minnesota. And of course, on our Tuesday show with Mark, and then on our Friday call-in show, myself and Tim Prangley, a lot more on the Golden Gophers. But tomorrow, Sunday, Tim and I will do another show going in a little bit deeper into this USC-Wisconsin game. So you're getting the quick reaction today, Tim live at the Los Angeles Coliseum. We will do another show tomorrow, and obviously you want to subscribe to the USC channel so that you get the notification of when we're going to actually do the show. Tim, do you have a sense of whether you want to do this in the morning or in the afternoon tomorrow?
It'll have to be in the morning. I got stuff going on. So yeah, so like nice little 9 a.m. wake up call for everyone might be the way to go.
Okay, so 9 or 10. It's going to be one of those two, 9 or 10.
Okay.
9 or 10.
Sounds good.
All right. 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. One of those two start times for tomorrow's fuller, deeper dive. USC Wisconsin. Tim Prangley is live at the Los Angeles Coliseum. Tim, thanks for joining us on our post-game show. Hope you had fun covering the game today.
I'm losing you, Matt. All right. I'll catch you guys later. Fight on.
All right. Fight on. See you tomorrow, folks. Tomorrow morning.